So, welcome to Wired Word. This is our current events discussion. Why don't we begin the week with a quick centering prayer? Will you join me in prayer, please? Great and loving God, we are beyond thankful to you for bringing us through yet another difficult week. We can sense your love and your wisdom breaking through into our reality. Please keep us aware of everything that you are doing through each of us in order to create a world that is more equitable, more filled with love, and open to new and unusual ideas about relating to one another through economics, politics, and social status. May we be the tools that recreate the world in your loving image in the same manner as Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Well, hello, everybody. Hello, Charlotte and Mark. Good to see you all. Okay, so this week's Wired Word was about the changes in names for the Washington Redskins and then master bedrooms and master bathrooms, which I have to tell you, I had never thought about, but as soon as I read it, I went, wow, no kidding, you know? And even in our house, though, even our house, it wasn't called, it's a Pulte house, so it was called owner's, I think owner's suite or something like that. But even owner sort of has those same connotations, you know? So I thought that it was just a really interesting article. Of course, Washington Redskins has been heinous for a long time, and it's unfortunate that it takes market economics to get people to actually do the right thing. But whatever, I'll take positive change any way that I can get it.
You know, the
So,
Dixie Chicks.
oh
the
yeah,
Dixie
that's
Chicks
right.
are coming back as the Chicks. That one I think is way too much. That's too much.
Yeah, I mean, how far is too far? Like even my comment about owners suite. I mean, but that, you know, when I read the bit about owners owner suite and master suite and those words being changed, I really did get caught up on this whole owners idea, partially because it took me down the rabbit hole of ownership in general and whether anything should actually be owned by any individual. You know what I mean? So there's a whole nother aspect to ownership that I have issues with. So, as well as, you know, Marx and others of our ilk, I suppose. So let's talk about these changes in meanings. I think it's very appropriate. You know, we've talked for the last few weeks roundaboutly about the power of words and the meaning of words and the difficulty with translations and biblical translations. So I think it's appropriate that this story came up too. So in your experience, what particular words have changed meaning over time? And how have you altered your use of these words? So I think what they're asking is, are there words that have changed meaning for you over time? And is there anything particular that happened to you or that you thought of? Anybody?
The word love changed drastically for me when I had children.
Oh, how so?
I don't actually say I love you to my kids because everyone says that. I have a little line that I say to each one of them that's different. I don't know. It just made me realize the use of the word and the vagueness of the word. That's why I came up with a little line for each of them so that it's not vague. It's very specific and it's very specific to them. I don't know. I just think we overuse it. I do too, you know. I love pizza. Come on, seriously.
I mean, is that really overuse of the word when it's referring to pizza? I don't know. But that's a beautiful story, Meg. I think that's really sweet. That's neat. Susan, I saw you had your hand up.
Good morning. I did. Mine
Good
is
morning.
sort of like two ends of the spectrum. God is one of the words that has changed drastically in my lifetime, from being raised in a Slovak Catholic church to where I am right now, looking at it as an energy. So that's the major one. And then on the total other end of the spectrum, I can't let this go. It's the White House. The White House used to be a noun, and now to me it's a verb. It's an actual action. It's an energy. It's an energy force. And I'm not going to judge anyone's thinking on that, but I know for me it's a negative energy force. So those two words have been sticking with me for the last 24 hours or so. And that's what I wanted to say at this point. And I just started reading Mary Trump's book, so I'm a little consumed.
All right. Well, we can all release that if we want to next week or Wednesday at Intersect, Susan. If you're around, it might be a good time to have a little Trump release if you like to. But whatever, whatever. It's all good. You said something that I wanted to expand on. And the White House. There's another one I hadn't thought of. I mean,
Yeah.
is that if that's an offensively named institution now, right?
It's taken on a whole different realm. When we were growing up, the White House was an image of power and truth, maybe, in our naive way, but it just doesn't, it's totally.
I mean, it's literally only named that because that's the color they painted it after it almost burned down.
Right.
So,
That's what I mean. It used to be a noun. It used to just be the house where, now it's energy. It's a living force. And so it's a verb now.
I get it. But this is where historical context.
For the people's house, now it's Donald Trump's house. And, before it was like a sign, even under Nixon, of even dignity. And now it seems like where I hear the White House, I kind of brace myself because it's, oh man, here we go again.
So here now we're talking not just about the way the meaning of words have changed for us over time, but now we're talking about symbols as well, right?
Yeah.
Because the White House, the phrase is words, but the White House itself is a symbol, right? So the two often go hand in hand. I mean, words are symbolic anyway. They create images in our mind of things. So, one of my favorite things about the Dan Brown books, what are those called? They take place in the Louvre and stuff.
The demon.
Help me. Those famous Dan Brown books. But the guy's a symbologist, the main character, and it's just fascinating work. And Joseph Campbell's work on myth. We are symbolic people, and we should expect that the meaning of the symbols we're using would change over time because things change. We know different things. We start to develop different codes of ethics. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the meanings that we attach to words are related to the values that we have in our society as well, such as Washington Redskins, for example, right? Being an okay name, and now it's not. It never should have been, of course. But part of this is also awakening to the understanding of other cultures and the importance of accepting other cultures and learning from other cultures about the beautiful things that they might believe or the knowledge that they have about certain things too. I think we also tend to forget that had the Native Americans not shared their knowledge of this land and how to use it in harmony with the early pilgrims, with the early settlers, they never would have survived. So I hope this is sort of a reawakening to that cultural awareness. Any other words you want to talk about that have changed meaning or symbols that have changed meaning? Or any words that today strike you as particularly racist or sexist or otherwise offensive, even though they may have seemed non-offensive in the past? You?
Well, black, I think, has come into my vocabulary because it's more politically correct. So, and the other words, Negro, colored, have fallen into the background.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, this is going back like over 50 years, is the term Mongoloid. And in 1980, they made this movie, said, oh, he's American, he's not from Mongolia. So, because that was almost like an offensive term.
Yep, derogatory, absolutely. Barbara?
Yeah.
I saw you had your hand up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was piggybacking on something.
I have to go.
Hang on, Mark. Barbara's talking, Mark.
Oh, that's okay. I can't remember exactly what I was going to say before, but reading today's article and thinking about it, what came to mind to me was the little poem that I think we all heard when we were growing up: "The sticks and stones will break my bones, but words can never hurt me." And I thought, well, what's the origin of that? So I started looking it up, and because obviously as adults and having lived our lives, we all know that's not true. Words are one of the most hurtful things, and you get hit with a stick and it heals up, but somebody says something to you as a child or at any point in your life that can stay with you forever. So I did come across this, somebody kind of went with that and changed it a bit, and it's just interesting. Do you want me to read it to you?
Sure, that'd be awesome.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can also hurt me. Stones and sticks break only skin, while words and ghosts that haunt me. Slant and curved, the word sword falls. It pierces and sticks inside me. Bats and bricks may ache through bones, but words can mortify me. Pain from words has left its scar on mind and heart that's tender. Cuts and bruises have not healed. It's words that I remember. So it's an interesting read on how important words are.
It's so true too. What was the line? Words have mortified me.
Yeah, it's an
Man.
old word, but the credit is Ruby Redford. I don't know who this person is, but that's the credit.
Somebody that was hurt.
Yeah.
Wow. But it's so, I mean, it's so true. And we can be so careless with words.
Mhm. I have to say that back to what you started in the introduction, Michael, was the master thing just threw me for a loop, because I never ever, and it's kind of a fun thing because, you know, there are words that you use your whole life and you never think about them. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, you think about them. And that I never, yeah, you know, I've lived in houses where the architect or somebody deemed that part of the house was the master bedroom. We refer to our bedroom, master bedroom suite here, and master bath, never, ever did I think about it, except that's the biggest bedroom somehow, but never, ever thought of it, connecting it to a racist or sexist, never, which was good for me because you know, we need to have those aha moments.
No, agreed. I had one with that whole same word. I had never thought. I've had several this week. I have to tell you, there was a discussion on Facebook too. We were talking about online school, about virtual school, and I think I made some remark about how it just needs to happen. And then somebody reminded me that that's all fine and dandy, except for a large percentage of children, they don't have internet access and they don't have computers, so there's no way for them to do virtual school. And I was like, wow, I am talk about a sense of privilege you're not even aware of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, you are correct. We need to fix that. So many things to fix though, and yeah. So it's good though. I agree, Barbara. I love those aha moments. Charlotte, please.
Well, I was watching NBC the other day. It was their third hour, and so they were talking about the difference between lying and fibs. And one of the commentators said, well, it's just a little white lie. And that would never have triggered my brain before. But being so aware of everything now, I was like, oh, wow, what's the reaction? And what's a white lie versus a black lie? So many of those things come up. And I remember too, Barbara, that not only the sticks and stones, but my grandmother used to do a poem about boys flying kites. Have you ever heard that one? Where boys flying kites can haul in their white-winged birds, but that is not so when flying words. Words unspoken can fall back dead, but not even God himself can undo them when once they're said.
Yeah.
Also fantastic. I saw Barbara and then Susan, please.
I remembered what I wanted to say when I went to the poem, but the whole idea of, and you reminded me, Charlotte, with the white lie. I guess it was recently a January adventure, but that wasn't the first time, but I was reminded again of both the racist and sexist words that are throughout. And I have a book by an English literature professor, I can't think of his name, letterer. And he talks about all the Black and how it is a negative connotation in our language over and over again. You know, if it's Black, the good, you know, the white hats were the good cowboys and the black hats were the bad cowboys. Just one example, but I've become aware of how Black is considered negative over and over again. And if you raised as a Black child and hearing that, it just went over my head as a child. I didn't have to worry about it. But it's another aha, how many words, how many negative things are connected to Black.
Susan, did you have something?
Just a quick on Charlotte's poem. There was a saying also, master of the unspoken word, once spoken, slave to that word. So that sort of fits in with Charlotte's poem. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Helen?
I think too, we have to remember this food thing, Aunt Jemima, the Quaker Oats, and so many of these things now are coming out that we have used years and years. I mean, I can't remember the one about in Africa, where you run around the tree and the buttermilk. I can't remember that thing now, but I know that was it. And my mom used to tell me about pig in the poke. I don't want to ever remember that, but apparently that's an Irish pun on Irish people. Pig in the poke is the policeman. Uh, I had, as my grandmother apparently told my mom this, and I never heard of it. It never bothered me. But when you think about it, pig in the poke, because they took their pigs and put them in the house, and so they would say that's the policeman, the pig in the poke. So I mean, words, food, how can we just take everything apart? Even the Redskins, how can we take all of these things apart because it's so overwhelming?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are the things that require complete systemic rethinking, and that's a good thing. I saw Charlotte, go ahead.
Yeah, I just heard on NPR this week, they were talking about housing developments changing their name because, especially here in the Florida area, a lot of them have the word plantation connected with it. And that's become negative as well. So they're changing it to resort or estates or something like that.
I find it interesting that we refer to everything as having become negative. A lot of things always were. A lot of things always were. We just didn't pay attention to it. And a lot of things have become so. The flag, my culture's flag, has become offensive, and no one in my culture understands that. Some things have become offensive, and those are the ones that concern me.
Yeah, I understand that. Go ahead, Grace, please.
I think the fact that it has am I freezing up again?
Yeah.
I think the reason, one of the reasons that it's taken us so long to be aware of these words is just showing us how much white privilege has just permeated us. We never think about these words. So I think the idea that they're becoming out there now, I think it's a great awakening and almost an embarrassment from the white community, to say, oh, shoot, I never thought of it. But anyway, the fact that we're even having to think about, oh, what words, because white privilege, we haven't had to.
Yeah, no, it's good. Susan, please.
We've gone so far away from the language as being a creative means, the Old English and reading all of the old prose. We had words that actually expanded meanings. And as we go through life right now, we're losing that beauty of that language, and we're just basically down now to the raw, the sky is blue, the earth is green, you know, that kind of stuff. We don't have the embellishment anymore to make beauty out of words. So we're so stuck now in the primitive words. We haven't been teaching it enough to the kids. So they have a very limited vocabulary. So now all of a sudden, all of our vocabulary is political. And I think that we just happen to be in the time where we have to rethink all of it. And I think we're lacking in beauty in words. So we're stuck on all of trying to analyze every single simple word.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very important point because it speaks to the literal worldview of many people today, and I would say the majority of Americans. There's no inventiveness of thought, and there's a misunderstanding, if there's any understanding at all, of metaphor, allegory. You know what I mean? People are just very, very literal. It's this way or it's that way. There's not really gray area in between. And it is that, Susan, is a very, very primitive way to look at things. Absolutely. So we have lost some bit of ability to look beyond the absolute meaning of the word into the implications that it has, especially related to the context in which it is used. Because our words are used in context. We don't just throw words around in a vacuum. And that makes a difference as well, as we've discussed with many words lately in society. A context can make a positive, even a positive word, negative. So part of this comes down to the values that we're giving these words to. But the literalism, the primitive sort of interpretations that we're using now are also affecting our faith, because so many people now are interpreting the Bible or other aspects of their faith in a very literal way. And in that respect, I think that is not primitive, because I actually think the people who wrote this stuff and who were earlier wrestling with it were very deep thinkers and wrote this stuff with an understanding of metaphor and allegory and parable and poetry and the beauty of words and the expansiveness of words, and they wrote it down to the best of their ability so that it would expand people's minds. And instead, I think today, a lot of people who read it get their minds closed by one little thing or another little thing. And part of that is because of translations. And I'm not really sure why this keeps coming up, but it comes up in conversations all the time for the last few weeks. You know, when we read the Bible, we're reading translations, and we can read 6 different English translations, and while they may be similar to each other, they are often different enough that they imply very different meanings. And for somebody like me, that's awesome, because I love to see that, because I think this is correct. This is the way we should be reading these things, because we're not reading them in Hebrew or Aramaic or whatever languages they were originally written in. And even if we were, we'd still be reading them in our modern context, not in the first century context or earlier contexts even, right? So there is a lot to consider when we think about all these words. And all this is to say that we should expect that the way we use words and the words that we use would change over time. So for Christians, we have a lot of words that we need to think about, including the word Christian. I'd say 2 words we really have to consider these days are Christian and church, and what they mean. You know?
Right.
Because they both have negative connotations today. Of course, they always did. These are words, like Meg said, it was always, Christianity always had a negative connotation to it. The Romans invented the word to throw slurs at people who followed Jesus. It was always derogatory, right? But now it's derogatory in a different sense, in that I think when people think of Christians, at least in America, they think of, you know, frankly, evangelicals and Jerry Falwell Jr. and, you know, we all get lumped into that. Go ahead, Barbara, please.
Well, I think that's the word that gives me the most trouble and the most pain and the most despair. I don't know, throw in some other negative words there to the conversation, but it is really changed. I use it so carefully now, and the whole idea, but you're a Christian, what does that mean? Well, if you're a Christian, of course you believe this. And now in my lifetime, I've seen behaviors that I totally do not agree with, being labeled as Christian. And if you were Christian, that's what you would be doing. So I'm very careful about how I use that now. There are some groups that we're associated with. They're the most loving, caring, giving to the community people in the world. And they shun that word and they shun church. And we have to be really careful. I mean, to say we go to church on Sunday puts us in some box that I don't want to be in, So it's kind of like, I feel like I either don't talk about it or I have to explain it in detail.
Yep.
And that's very tiring to do in a social group all the time. So sometimes I just don't do it. It's very sad. It's sad. And how did we get, and I keep saying, and I know a little bit, but how did we get from when I was growing up to now that, as you said, Michael, when people think of Christians, they think of evangelicals? That wasn't always the truth. I mean, I'd rather use the word a follower of Christ or, a follower of Christ, not a Christian, because Christian just has too much negative connotation to it.
Yep. Agreed. We'll talk some more about this. Go ahead, Susan.
To go along with what Barbara's saying, when she asked, when did this all happen? It's when evangelicals became politicized and they made a lot of money and they now run the people who are running the country. So Christianity took a metaphorical term to financial well-being rather than spiritual enhancement and spiritual beliefs.
Yeah.
And churches are now, because they're so polarized, like you said, whereas now churches should be looked at as a place without walls, a community of spirit. So we're just in that time. We just are here for a reason. I know we're here for a reason. I pray we're here for a reason.
Yes.
I tend to use offensive words purposefully. Offensive words that apply to me, I will use purposefully so that they have no power over the person I'm speaking to, or rather they have no power over me to the person I'm speaking to. I've referred to myself as a Christian a lot. I've referred to myself as a faggot. A lot of offensive words so that they can't be used against me.
It does make sense, but it also seems like a very difficult spiritual practice that would require, that's, for me,
not really, because the words just don't mean anything to me.
That's good.
They just don't, When I was having Ricky, I made Beanie Baby jokes. So you could call my son whatever you want to call my son. You could call him a spick. It's just not going to bother me because I use those terms myself till they have no
Isn't that what the black people
power.
Yeah, that's the whole thing
Right. Absolutely. Go ahead, Helen.
I know what you're saying.
I was just thinking the words, but then sometimes we put a symbol in. We put a cross in. Oh gosh, and the bell, and the Bible. So if we aren't saying the words, Christian, we may, as you say on their table back there, those are symbols, and goes back even to the Romans. And so what did the underground people do? They used the fish. So the world is very complicated. So when it's just so no, then you find another way to do it. If it's carrying a fish, or you use a cross, or that type of thing. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but it might.
No, it makes perfect sense, Helen. People, Christianity, again, we're talking about words and symbols apparently today, and even the symbols of Christianity have gone through changes over time, and their meanings have undergone changes. The primary symbol of Christianity, the cross, is all about a change of meaning, right? The whole point of sort of embracing the cross speaks to Meg's idea about embracing hurtful words as well. We embrace the cross as Christians to show that it has no power over us, right? That sort of empirical attitude that we will just kill anybody who rebels against us has no power over people who believe that God will win, essentially, that God's love wins, that there's this new realm of God's love that's been breaking into the world and is now coming in even more powerfully. So you can crucify me if you want to, but that's not going to stop God, right? So
Amen.
that way, embracing a negative symbol and turning it into a positive is powerful. And it took me many, many years, by the way, to come to that understanding of the cross and to accept it as something meaningful in my life. Because even though I knew intellectually that this is what many Christians believed about the cross, I still thought it was kind of BS, because ultimately it is an instrument of torture. So why do we use that to symbolize this Prince of Peace, this prophet of love, this world-changing agent? But I get it, because in some way it also helps us to embrace the thing that snuffed out his message, and really snuffed it out, right? Because it eventually overtook the message and became the Holy Roman Empire, calling and became the only ones who had Jesus's message, right? So they snuffed it out. And yet his real message of love and compassion and interconnection and community, it still prevails today, because we gather in small communities like this, even over and against any sort of religious empire, and talk about Jesus in very real ways that are meaningful to us, I hope. Charlotte.
To me, the cross was a symbol because it's empty. And so God prevailed. Christ is no longer on the cross, but with God. So that's what we were always taught, and why Protestants did not have Christ on the cross as the Catholics did.
Right. Yes. That's absolutely one of the Protestant teens as well. Yes. Susan, please.
The cross was also a very divisive factor, though. I mean, if you had a church that didn't have the cross, then you were bad, and we were good because we have the cross. And the difference between the Protestants and the Catholics, I went to Ave Maria a couple weeks ago. I wanted to go to the Latin Mass just to kind of remember things.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But that cross is terrifying. If you've
Yep.
ever looked closely at the face, I mean, it's there to terrorize you. And it made me remember, it brought back memories, all right, how terrifying Catholic religion was. But that cross is a very powerful, divisive symbol.
It is. Well,
I always wore,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Meg.
I always wore a cross and not a crucifix. And when people ask me why Jesus wasn't on it, I tell them he got off. You didn't know that? Like, you didn't get that part? He got off.
Yeah, ascension is the end, not the crucifixion. But yeah, I get it. But this just shows, again, not only over time, but even in a similar era, the different meanings that words and symbols have in different groups of people. Just something like the cross has a variety of different meanings. We didn't really use it in our sanctuary for a long time. I just had that sort of silver pewter one up there, but mainly as a statement. But now I have all sorts of symbols in this room from like every different religion, because I'm a symbols guy. I like them all, and I can impart meaning from all of them in different ways. They mean different things to me, and some of them are probably not even authentic to their religions, to tell you the truth, but it's okay. They mean something to me. They connect me spiritually. So I think it's important for us to sort of find the symbols and the words that help us as individuals connect, because as long as we are staying centered in the love of God, it makes it easier for us to relate to other people, and help get them centered or stay centered as well. And it's, as well as I do, it's easy to say that on a Sunday morning, but tomorrow when we're all back at work, it's going to be another story. So, but I keep trying. All we can do is try, right? So we talked a little bit about sort of the idea of Christianity being a difficult name to identify with today. And this has been true for many years. I still have difficulty identifying that way too. I would like us to think, over the next few weeks about words that have meaning to you, that might work, that you would use if you were talking to friends about who we are, because we need to start thinking about these things, quite frankly. How do we really better present ourselves? Because it's been difficult, and it's something I've struggled with my whole tenure here, is how to really describe to people what this place is in like under 25 words without talking for an hour. It's a little bit easier now. We've got videos up we can actually take them to, and that's helped, but still, if I tell people I'm a Christian pastor, they immediately ask where my Bible is, and if I'm going to save their souls. And you know, it's just interesting. So we have a lot of word work to do as Christians. If we're going to keep the word, we need to figure out how to reclaim it. If we're going to change it, we need to figure out what it's going to be, and if that's going to have any meaning to anybody else, right? Especially to a group of people for whom religion in general has largely lost meaning. So I think it's kind of exciting, though. I feel like God has reinvigorated the faithful to and given us not permission, but maybe sort of opened the way for us to really start thinking in completely original ways about what these sort of gatherings are called, and we've had to change how we do them anyway because of this pandemic thing. So something is afoot, and I am glad we're discussing it, thinking about the meaning of words. I see people thinking more deeply. I'm glad to see these kind of stories on the 24-hour news cycle, more often, because we've talked about how dangerous the 24-hour news cycle is, because you keep getting pounded with with all the negative stories and Trump. But it's been nice to see that displaced a little bit by discussions about what these words mean and how white privileged American society has been created. And I'm seeing those stories all the time. And as well as I do, they start to creep into the public consciousness. So I am really hopeful that in this case, this always on news cycle might actually be our friend and help us do some positive work. So I don't know why I just preached all that. So
Hey, Pastor Michael.
Yes, Chris, please.
How you doing, guys?
Everybody's good. It's
Hey,
good to hear you.
there's some evidence that we might still be in that Roman Empire, and that all the presidents we have are descendants of ancient Sumerians, which eventually became, the rulers of Roman empires and stuff. When you say the word war king, who does that benefit? It benefits the war king. And aren't we the top war lords of the planet? So when we work, we benefit the war king, and you get paychecked every week. Remember that. You get checked every week. Do what you love. Money's fake. Don't do anything else.
The chess analogy is awesome, dude. And yes, absolutely, do what you love. And I think whether or not there's any truth to presidents actually being direct descendants of some sort of Roman emperors, the fact that our country acts very much like the Roman Empire is, I think, right. I think it's indisputable. So we're in a very similar situation as to what Jesus faced in his era as well, when his government and his religion decided to become bedfellows, and they were so intertwined with each other that neither was doing any good for the people. But the wealthy were really lining their pockets, the people that were in power, right? So we have the same thing here. We have a power structure that lines its pockets without ever really doing anything good for the people. And in fact, now I think we live in an empire that's willingly doing ill to its people simply to maintain power. And for me, that's one of the defining points of empire, when it's more concerned about its self-preservation than the good of its people. So I think that's a real prescient analogy, Chris. Barbara, please.
Yeah, I appreciate what Chris said. And piggybacking on that, with these kind of caveats, what to be aware of in the empire, I think we have to definitely be aware of the news. And I don't care which news. I'm talking about the news. Always, we need to be aware that the news is a business. The bad news gets more viewership. Their numbers are skyrocketing now. They're making money hand over fist, all the news broadcasters. And it is in their best interest to perpetuate bad news that gets us stuck on the TV. So just, I like to watch the news as much as anybody else. I try to not watch it as much as some people that I love do, but it's, we just need to remember that it's also a business. It has God bless the journalists and all that we need it in a democracy. But as far as the broadcast news, they're feeding us as much negative news as possible because they get more people watching and they make more money.
Yeah, very important point that I tend to forget as well. These are businesses, for-profit businesses, and they make their money off of advertising. I would like to piggyback on this idea though, because I think, you know, I think that corporations have been using their advertising power in a much more effective and beneficial way lately than before. I've been happy to see so many of the world's multinational corporations band together to tell people like Facebook and others that we're pulling all of our advertising from your platform until you clean this thing up. And what was supposed to be a small boycott is still going on. And now they're starting to form a coalition so that they can sort of force these standards in other places too. So, and that, you know, many of them pulled out of what Tucker Carlson's broadcast. So, again, I think it's unfortunate that we live in a society that has to rely on multinational businesses to do the right thing because there's no reason for them to. And in fact, it's somewhat an anathema for them to do something that's not just about making profits. But yet here they are doing it because things have gotten so bad. But at some point, we have to move beyond that paradigm into a place where the structure itself is about the common good, and that a corporation doesn't have to suddenly find some sort of good heart, which they're only finding, of course, so that you'll buy stuff from them later on anyway. Susan, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, when Barbara was speaking, I have not had television for 12 years. So I don't watch news. I don't watch it. I have very limited sources, and I try to stick to the sources that only just deal with both sides of everything. And I can't imagine how it takes every day for me to digest and find some truth in what's happening. And I can't imagine watching television every day and having it actually come at you along with the advertisements and even have a chance to have a very reasonable response to everything, and that's only because I am insulated now from now. I tried once to watch it and I felt like I was put my finger in a light socket because it was so intense. Yeah. So yeah, we just have to choose, we have to maybe just choose where we want to hear our facts and then make your own heartfelt decision on where you stand with things. Because that's what they want us to be. They want us to be befuddled. They want us to be confused. They want us to be angry. They want us to be crazy. And then we'll do what they want because it's too much trouble not to.
Mm-hmm. Barbara?
Yeah, and just to throw a little psychology in here, neuroscience-based psychology. And one of the persons that's famous for this research is Daniel Amen. But all of the thoughts, words that are negative that come at us, there are brain chemical changes that happen. We know that. It's been proven. So these brain chemical changes embed our brain so that we're totally affected by those. And then we're more prone to have automatic negative thoughts that come out from that. And then that's how we live our lives, and that affects our action and our behavior. So for a lot of reasons, negative words from the TV or from each other, whatever, impact us profoundly. And maybe even, through our DNA to the next generation and the next generation. So it's not a little simple thing.
Wow. And do positive words don't affect us the same way?
Yeah, positive words are affect us too. But it's the negative, it's because of our evolutionary process, negative things cautioned us to be careful and kept us safe. So the negative things have more of an impact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense. That's why negativity is such a barrier to change, right? That's why something that's like what's happening now, all over the world, really, but especially in our country, is so difficult because there's already been negative conditioning against equality, quite frankly, right? Susan.
Does negativity actually enhance our cortisone levels that make us do the fight and flight thing? I'm wondering, as you were talking, positive affects our brain and our inner organs to relax, but maybe negativity gets us going. And
Sure it
that's
does.
why we're all reacting so much, is because
Sure it does.
that's it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Of course it does. In fact, there on Facebook just recently, Hugh knows about this. We have a neighbor, and she's an artist, and she's a very kind, caring, compassionate, kind of, you just think mellow kind of person, works with the elderly with art and children, and she draws children's books. And I'm trying to give you an idea of this woman. And this just recently, she had this rant on Facebook. She just threw it all out there. And she said, I have never used the F word so many times in 10 minutes as I just did last evening. And I was like, I can identify with her, because what's going on in our world right now, particularly from, a certain person who'll go unnamed, just puts me into a rage. It's because it's so awful and so terrible, and so many people. And if you're just trying to run for office, that's one thing, but people are dying because of this stupidity. So I could identify with it. And I'm really working on not going there, not getting to that place again, because it is powerful and painful. And I know it's affecting me. It has to. It has to. It has to.
It does. We've all been in that space lately at one time or another. All of us. And I think Facebook especially can get you there. And I've started to deal with Facebook in a different way because I basically only use it to post church stuff every day. But with our church, sometimes that's enough to get people going. So I simply just delete the most heinous things. I don't even respond to them anymore. But the ones that are maybe that at least have some thought to them, even if they're negative, I'll keep up and try to respond to and be invitational about. You know what I mean? And then on my personal page, I've pretty much cleared things out so that I don't have to deal with the complete insanity any longer. Hey, Susan, it's good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. So in our last few minutes here before we break before God Connect, I just want to talk about this idea that's presented in Genesis and also in the Gospel of John about God creating through the Word, right? God says, for example, let there be light, and there's light. And God says this, and God says that, and then all these things happen after God says them, right? And the concept is expanded upon in the Gospel of John with the Word being made flesh and the words being existent from the beginning. So I just wonder if you all have given any thought to the idea of the creative power, if not of words, then of the sound that makes words. We've talked about some of the negative ways that words can affect us today. And I'd like to think just for a moment, not just about the positive ways that words can affect us, but actually about the creative power of words, especially from God's perspective. What does it mean that that our ancestors at least used the language that says God spoke everything into existence? What do you think that even says about the power of speech? Susan Pratt.
We think that because we're human beings on this planet and word is the only way, or our interaction with each other is by sound, that's the only way they could have even started even describing what their thought of God was doing. He wasn't sitting up there saying, oh, let there be light. Wow, we got light, sunshine. It was just an act of pure energy making it happen. So, but the only way we as human beings could let each other know anything is through our own sounds, whatever they are. So they're very powerful. I think they do. And as when it comes to doing a painting, I'm doing it for someone, they'd have to tell me. They have to use their words to describe what they see. But then when that's finished, I come home and I have to find the words, what it means in here, and the words don't work anymore. It has to be an intuitive thing. And I think words happen so that you can then get your own intuition going and decipher it in the way you can.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys there?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah.
Hey guys. Hey, you know, I know you guys don't know me from Adam, but I love you guys. I want to say something. I want to help you guys today. I think I can help you guys. You ready?
Yes.
There was a promise made to us, and Earth has all. Sorry, my breath is kicking. I'm blowing it, Megan. There was a promise made to us that Earth was full of all these lessons and stuff, but the promise was that we have like a kingdom in heaven, right? Where is heaven? It's above, right? So stop being so down. Stop investing in this place so much. I mean, we put so much into this place, but it's not formless. It's material. Invest into that heaven, that above. Go above. Don't be so down. Earth isn't everything, guys. It's not everything.
It's true. And you're speaking also to the idea of as above, so below, which of course is so present in our faith
Well, you
ancestors.
gotta balance it. You gotta balance it, obviously, because you gotta be here. But you know, it will pass. We all go.
Yes.
You know?
And I think while we are here, though, that we can help sort of bring in this other dimension, that Jesus talks about, the kingdom of heaven, right? The realm of God. I think part of the reason that we're here and in conversations like this is to sort of start bringing that about. And I believe that this has been a very, very long process, and it will continue to be a long process. But I think when we see turmoil, especially turmoil related to civil rights and justice, to me, that is always the movement of God in the world. And it indicates that this reality is still changing. And that while, heaven, wherever it exists, literally, metaphysically, whether it's another dimension or, whatever that concept of that peaceful, perfect coexistence is, it doesn't exist on Earth. And if it did, Earth wouldn't be Earth. But that also doesn't mean that part of our work isn't to make Earth a little bit more like heaven. I think Jesus is very clear about the idea that the kingdom of heaven is within, amongst, and around us, right? Whichever of those translations you want to take, you can read 6 different Bibles. The kingdom of heaven's within you, the kingdom of heaven's among you, the kingdom of heaven's around you. They're all correct because it is, right? It's a matter of awareness and then doing the work to help make it a reality in the here and now. And I think that's something that we all work toward every day. I also want to say one more thing about this idea of reality being sort of spoken into existence by God. God says, let there be light, and God creates the heavens and the earth, and it all happens through words. I think it speaks to maybe a subconscious understanding that sound is literally creative, right? We know that sound affects things at a molecular level. And I don't think it's outrageous to consider that sound might be a more important building block, fundamental building block in sort of the structure of the universe than we've given it credit for. I don't think we necessarily think of that because we think everything happens in space, and space is a vacuum, so there can't be sound in a vacuum. So, while there can be energy and these sort of things that create it, can't literally be sound because, the definition of sound is that there's got to be a medium for it to travel through, and there's got to be a sender and a receiver. But I think that's a limited human definition of sound as well. And that it's interesting to think about these things that God says as being sort of, creative breaths, universal creative conscious breaths, just kind of bringing things in. It's just sort of I don't know, it just brings me comfort in a big way.
Hey, Pastor Michael.
Yeah, man.
I like what you just said about space. And here's a cool little thing that I learned about space, that they look into the DNA and they find the atoms and the quarks and all that. And what they realize is they can't find an end. There is no end. We
That's right.
are eternally going forever. like the inside of your DNA and your atoms and your nucleuses and all that shit, it goes forever. There is no end. You are space.
That's right. Yeah. Amen. It's absolutely right. This is, Chris, it's understandings like that that helped me deal with concepts like life after death and eternal life and reincarnation and resurrection and things like this. When you think about them on a universal level, this is the way the universe works. A star explodes and it creates all the matter that's necessary for new life. When that new life dies, that matter isn't destroyed. We already know that matter is never destroyed or created. It just is. So it's converted, right? It's a constant process of living conversion, which I just find fascinating. And I wish that I could experience it in even bigger way, you know what I mean? But even at least being able to grok that concept a little bit, I think brings us closer together as people. Do you know what I mean? I know that sometimes we're talking about these big sort of universal things about God as the universe or God as the consciousness of everything. But it's only to understand that we all exist in that we're all in that soup together, you know? So it's in our best interests to work together to cook up the best soup that we can. All right, folks, good stuff. Anything else before we take a 15-minute break before service today? Any last comments at all? I will try to regroup and change. Okay, I'll turn the lobby back on. I will see you all for God Connected in about 15 minutes. Thank you so much for sharing so honestly and thoroughly. See you in a minute.